P. Barnum, actually had to die. She dies because she drops all the balls, or the other way around. She drops all the balls and then dies. Or as she wrote, it's a beautiful way for a death. It's a beautiful way to picture a death. But anyway, she tells us in the foreword that she was petrified when she read that. All she wanted to do was run home to her one-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side of New York and hide under the covers in a fetal position. And and yet we took the time. She and I met at the sort of shabby old ballroom in an old hotel where the rehearsals were being held, and we slowly, one throw at a time, learned how to juggle. And she was a great student. She's very humble in the book. She's, talking about how difficult it was, but how it came to her a little bit at a time. But her enthusiasm can't be held down as she wrote it. She wrote this wonderful piece. In any case, all of that is prelude to the fact that when we decided to do a audiobook, I suddenly one day said, hey, maybe Glenn ought to do her foreword, read her foreword for the audiobook. Now, I didn't know for sure if she would do it. I do know that I saw her once or twice in the interim because I went to see her in Sunset Boulevard, which she won Tony Awards for. She was simply brilliant in Sunset Boulevard, on stage, on Broadway. And so I contacted her. At the time, she was doing a shoot in Vancouver. And the response was, yeah, she will do it when she gets back to her home, which was by now, in Bozeman, Montana. Eventually, she got back. She went to the audio studio there, good professional audio person, and she recorded it. And when I heard it, which wasn't that long ago, I gave it, I let it sit. I sort of previewed a little section just to see that it was correct in terms of the technique or the technical aspects. And there it was, Glenn Close. Glenn Close, certainly amongst the greatest actresses in the world, certainly in America, reading her foreword. And it just brilliant. What a pleasure and honor it was to have her. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Suzanne.
What a way to get the book introduced, though, to have that name. I mean, let's face it, her name alone is magical. And the way the book became an audiobook, I mean, you and I talked about this before we started to record. This was not your idea, and the idea actually came from a student who bought the book after one of your seminars, and he's a young actor, and he came to you and said...
Yeah, brilliant actor at that, but go on, yes.
And said, let's do this. And, I mean, this is just sort of, you didn't even think about doing this before he came to you.
No, I didn't. That's correct. I did not think about it. He called me one day. It was a telephone call. This was, a couple of years or so after he had bought the book at the Dartmouth bookstore after the seminar. And, I was happy to be there, sign books and so on. And he said, hey, Paul, I really love your book. I said, thanks, Max. He said, Max Samuels is his name. And he said, I would love to do an audiobook of it. And I kind of went, well, sounds good. And then he added, of course, I want to narrate it. Wow. So he is going to voice me. And I really didn't think twice. I mean, I said, sounds great, Max, let's go for it. He is I had been in touch with him. I had meetings with him at the local diner in New York. He had another student, Debbie Giordani, and I would meet for breakfast every now and then, just for the pleasure of changing ideas, because they were both these they're very smart kids, these kids who were at Dartmouth. And at the same time, they are tabula rasa. They're a blank sheet of paper.
Blank slate. Mm-hmm.
And if they have the humility that goes with that, they are a pleasure to talk to because they're willing to fill in the blanks. And anyway, so we would meet for breakfast occasionally, and I stayed with him, and to this day, I could pick up the phone and call him and know he'll return my call if he's not there at that time. But it's his idea. And he does me in the audiobook. He does me better than me.
You're happy with it, aren't you?
Oh, my gosh, yes. You know, we did go over it recently because it's in the editing phase, and we wanted to make sure we had all of the, you know, everything right. A lot of pronunciations, because the book has me traveling, remember, in France around a grand tour of the Great Tour of France, from Dijon all the way to, I'm blanking on the name of Perpignan was another great city, to Aix-en-Provence, around La Rochelle is where we ended up, and the pronunciations of the French place names, the pronunciation of the individual people's names, all of that was part of the preparation for the audiobook, because he was not a French student, interestingly enough. Of course, he was a Dartmouth College. He was a Chinese student. Come on, Max. Well, this is French. We all took French, didn't we? And I will tell you, a pleasure to collaborate with the guy. And it's in the final stage of the editing, copy editing, really. And then it's going to the publisher. We don't actually have a publishing date or anything yet. All that will come soon. So stay tuned.
Well, apologize to Max for me. Apologize to Max for me for my feeble attempt at the very beginning of our podcast, but I could not resist. I thought that was, since we're talking about this as an audiobook, and you know, I think even if we'd only been talking about the print book, I think those words are exciting, and the crowd went wild. That's exciting. Yeah. And the book is available on Amazon. Now, I checked Amazon. I went to the website, and let me give the specific name so that the listeners can find it. If you go to Amazon, if you've never been to Amazon to purchase a book before, all you have to do is in the search feature at the top of the page on your computer, just type in www.amazon.com, and it almost comes up without you clicking on it. It's sort of magical. The name of the book is Never Quote the Weather, Weather, to a Sea Lion, by Paul, Paul, Binder. I got it, Binder. And if you put that in the search feature, click on it, the book will come right up. Now, if you look at the upper right-hand corner, there are two words that you see right beside the book, and it says, look inside. If you click on those two words, then the book, and I don't know why I do this, but I feel like I have to do air quotes because the book, quote, opens. But it doesn't really open. Of course, it's electronic. So right there is an excerpt, and you'll see the picture that both pictures that Paul described. It's in that excerpt, and then you'll get to read the story about his mother, and then there is some other information. There's some more of the book there. Now, if you want to buy the Kindle version or the hardback or the paperback version, you can do that. It's right there. The audiobook will be coming soon, right, Paul? Yes, definitely. Now that it's all there, all recorded, you bet it's coming soon. Now, your website, oh my gosh, I looked at your website, and it is a treasure trove. Oh my. Yes, it really is. Let's give the listeners the address, and then let's tell them what they'll find there, because it's just filled with wonderful stuff. It's www.paulbindercircus.com. Click on that, and a world will open. I mean, let's tell them what's there. The first thing that I loved, you've got videos, and you were a regular guest as Paul the Juggler on that wonderful Muppet Show back in the day when the Muppet Show was so much fun and so new. And the video that I particularly enjoyed was the video where you guys are working on the bowling alley for Oscar the Grouch. Yes. It was wonderful. Yeah. What was it like to work with the Muppets?
Oh, I got to tell you that working with Oscar. Now, remember, there was a puppeteer no more than 4 feet below the can. I don't even think it was that much. And he was lying on his back and doing, physically doing and voicing Oscar. Well, once you start working, the cameras roll and boom, you're in it. I'm talking to Oscar, and it never even occurs to me there's anybody else but Oscar that I'm talking to. It just automatically clicked in for me. So there I was with Michael Christensen, who was my performance partner and juggling partner, and we were 2 working guys whose job was to set up Oscar's bowling alley. It was a 6-pin bowling alley. You see, our best juggling was done with 6 clubs. So we were happy to do it, and he was a grouch, all right. or as Art Carney used to say, "Jeez, what a grouch!" In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they got the character from. But, that line that Art Carney used to. What was the name of the character Art Carney used to do on
the Honeymooners?
The Honeymooners.
With Jackie Gleason and I can't remember.
June Meadows.
Yep.
June Meadows.
Yep.
And anyway, he was the downstairs neighbor. I wish I could remember his character name. He was wonderful, wonderful comedian actor. Anyway, it was Oscar the Grouch, Sesame Street. Well, there we were. I got to tell you that was one shoot in one day with Oscar. We also did, I think 5 or 6, what they called inserts, which in our case were numbers, because we were doing 3 clubs, 4 clubs, 5 clubs, 6 clubs, 7 clubs. And each of those became an insert. Each had a patter that went along with them. And they ran those for 9 years. I was like, wow. I mean, okay, maybe it was 4 or 5 times a year that number 6 would come up. Maybe less. But at the end of the year, we would get a royalty. Can you imagine? We'd get a royalty.
No.
Except it was just that. A royalty. It was one payment, no matter how many times we did it. I guess we were Sesame Street was PBS, and it was a not-for-profit, and that's how they paid royalties. You know what? It was exciting to get in any case. That was such a wonderful, exciting time, to have that kind of fun, and it was work. Oh yeah, be sure it was work, but it wasn't what I would call toil. It was just work. We did our job, and we enjoyed doing it. So it was a great pleasure.
You've also got a blog. I mean, what else is on your website? There's so much information there. And if people want to contact you, you're available to do speaking engagements and things like that. They can also contact you on that website. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Paul at paulbindercircus.com. And I just signed up for another class in Sarasota, Florida, for OLLI, which is OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute, and it's wonderful organization.
I've worked with them.
Did you?
Yeah, I've worked with them here in Texas as well.
Oh, great! Yeah, they are. They're all over the U.S. and the people here have been wonderful. When I say here, I mean Sarasota, Florida. And they asked me this be the second time I've done a class. So that's 4 sessions in an hour and 20 minutes each. It's very demanding, but it was wonderfully enjoyable. As much because the students in the class obviously do their homework, and they come back with wonderful questions, and it triggers the wonderful answers. So that's the latest. I'm doing my availability. I'm doing this now. That and finishing whatever it takes to do the audiobook.
Paul, I could talk to you forever. I mean, it's just so much fun, and you have so many stories, but we have to stop. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I know. I'm sorry. I hate to stop, too. And the last question that I always ask the author, because, for me, it's always important for the author to have the last word